Elliot loved old things. He loved their history, their stories. Every Saturday he explored antique shops, searching for hidden treasures. Elliot imagined the people who once owned these objects. He wondered about their lives. Elliot collected old books, faded photographs, and forgotten toys. Each item held a memory, a whisper of the past. He displayed them carefully in his apartment, turning his home into a museum of forgotten lives. One rainy Saturday, Elliot stumbled upon a new shop. It was tucked away on a quiet street, hidden from the bustling city. The shop's windows were dusty and cobwebs hung from the sign. Still, something drew Elliot inside. He felt a thrill of anticipation. A new adventure awaited. The shop was dark and dusty, filled with strange and wonderful objects. Elliot ran his fingers along a chipped porcelain doll, traced the inscription on an antique compass. Each piece hummed with silent stories waiting to be discovered. At the back of the shop, something shimmered. Elliot pushed aside a velvet curtain, revealing an ornate mirror. It was taller than he was, with a silver frame adorned with swirling patterns. The mirror's glass was dark, almost black, but it sparkled faintly in the dim light. Elliot felt strangely drawn to the mirror. Its smooth surface seemed to pull him in, whispering promises of forgotten secrets. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly, and touched the cold glass. A shiver ran down his spine. It felt strangely alive. Elliot bought the mirror. He couldn't explain the pull he felt, the strange connection. The shopkeeper seemed reluctant to part with it, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and warning. But Elliot was determined. This mirror, he felt, was special. He brought the mirror home, placing it in his living room. The room, usually filled with the comforting presence of his antiques, now felt different. The air felt heavy, charged with an unseen energy. As Elliot sat reading that night, he kept glancing at the mirror. It seemed to watch him, its dark surface reflecting nothing but shadows. He felt a prickle of unease. It was just an old mirror, he told himself, but he couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. That night, Elliot woke with a start. A tapping sound, soft but persistent, seemed to be coming from the living room. He grabbed his dressing gown and crept down the hallway, his heart pounding. The tapping grew louder as he neared the living room. It seemed to be coming from the mirror. Elliot froze, his breath catching in his throat. In the mirror's reflection, he saw a fleeting image, a figure, tall and shadowy, standing behind him. Elliot whirled around, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Had he imagined it? His reflection in the mirror stared back at him, its expression unreadable. He couldn't shake off the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Section 5. Trapped Reflections. Days turned into weeks, and the strange occurrences continued. Whispers seemed to emanate from the mirror, barely audible murmurs that sent shivers down Elliot's spine. He would catch glimpses of movement in the reflection, shadows flitting across the glass. One evening, as Elliot sat sketching, he glanced at the mirror. His blood ran cold. The reflection wasn't him. It was a twisted version, his face stretched into a grotesque smile, his eyes glowing with an eerie light. Elliot stumbled back, dropping his sketchbook. He blinked, and the reflection returned to normal. His heart hammered in his chest. He couldn't deny it any longer. The mirror wasn't just haunted, it was dangerous. Section 6. The Face in the Mirror. Elliot tried to avoid the mirror, but it was impossible. It seemed to call to him, drawing his gaze. He felt an overwhelming urge to look, to confront the darkness that lurked within its depths. One night he found himself standing in front of the mirror, staring at his reflection. The face that stared back was no longer his own. It was a being of pure shadow, its eyes blazing with malevolent energy. "Who are you?" Elliot whispered, his voice trembling. The reflection smiled, a chilling, humorless stretching of its shadowy lips. "You are me!" it hissed, its voice a hollow echo. "And I am you. We are one." Section 7. The Struggle. Panic surged through Elliot. He tried to step back to break eye contact, but an invisible force held him in place. The reflection reached out from the mirror, its shadowy hand a claw reaching for his throat. Elliot thrashed, desperate to break free. He grabbed a nearby vase, hurling it at the mirror. It smashed against the glass, but the reflection remained, its grin widening. You cannot escape. The reflection hissed, its voice a strangling rasp. You are mine now. The grip on Elliot's throat tightened. He choked, his vision blurring at the edges. He was losing the fight. The darkness was consuming him. Section 8. A new reflection. With a final desperate surge, Elliot slammed his hand against the mirror's surface. The world exploded in a blinding flash of light. He cried out, collapsing to the floor, his ears ringing. When he opened his eyes, the mirror was different. It no longer pulsed with an eerie glow. The surface was clear, reflecting the room perfectly, but Elliot was gone. In his place stood a figure of shadow, its eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light. It smiled, a slow, cruel stretching of its lips. It was free. Section 9. The cycle continues. Weeks later, a young woman bought the ornate mirror at an antique shop. She admired its intricate frame, its dark, mysterious glass. It would look perfect in her living room, she thought. As she paid the shopkeeper, he hesitated, a flicker of warning in his eyes. "Be careful with that one," he murmured, his voice low. "It's got a way of watching back." The young woman laughed, dismissing his words as the ramblings of an eccentric old man. She had no idea the darkness she was bringing into her home. The mirror, now free, was ready to claim a new soul. The cycle begins anew.